Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Teena Jha, you're watching Perspective. Nepal is in the grip of an unprecedented political upheaval. A Gen Z-led uprising has forced Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli to resign, plunging the Himalayan nation into deep uncertainty. Nearly 24 people have lost their lives and more than 300 have been injured in the violent unrest sparked by the government's decision to ban 26 social media platforms. What began as street protests escalated into chaos. Demonstrators stormed Parliament, vandalizing and setting fire to multiple chambers of the building. The fury also reached the homes of political leaders. Residences of former prime ministers and ministers were torched, as were party offices, hotels, media houses, and even parts of the Supreme Court compound. Prisons across Nepal were breached, with hundreds of inmates released amid the turmoil. With law and order collapsing, the army has stepped in, imposing strict curbs and taking control of the security. But the unrest is far from over. Young protesters are now calling for a non-political leader, denouncing decades of political failure and demanding freedom from corruption. This turmoil next door inevitably raises questions for India. Why did a youth-led protest spiral into such violence? What is fueling the frustration of Nepal's young generation? To explore these critical questions, we are joined by a distinguished panel of experts who've been closely following developments in Nepal. I'm pleased to welcome on this edition of Perspective Dr. Smruti S. Pattanaik, Research Fellow, Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defence Studies and Analysis, and Professor Pratap Singh, Department of Political Science, Banaras Hindu University. Thank you to both my guests for joining us on this edition of Perspective. Welcome to Sansad TV. Dr. Pattanaik, let me begin the conversation with you. Demonstrations that began against the social media ban in Nepal soon turned violent and dangerous, so much so that government buildings, including chambers of parliament and the Supreme Court, were set on fire, visuals of which we saw through the day yesterday, as well as residences of several political leaders. What, in your understanding, are the deeper factors that fueled such intense anger among the youth of Nepal?
The dissatisfaction regarding the political system, we saw a transition in 2008 from a constitutional monarchical system that was prevalent in Nepal till 2006, drawing of a new constitution by a constituent assembly, adoption of a constitution in 2015. All this suggested a kind of hope of new Nepal, where the political parties and the democratic rule will be established and it would be much more of a corruption-free. But what we have seen and what actually the youth, in fact, are frustrated, they see the same old politics in the so-called new Nepal after the political transition to a republican system. So people were extremely frustrated. The same, group of political parties, especially the political leaders, it's Prachanda, Sher Bahadur Deuba and KP Sharma Oli, in fact, changing places, and three of them by turn are becoming prime minister, and they have not only stalled investigations on corruption issues, which was accused against some of these prime ministers, former prime ministers, but there has not been any kind of progress. So somehow the system, the political system and the political leaders were trying to shield the corruption. So the dissatisfaction was very much palpable on the ground. But then again, of course, you need a trigger in any country for things to erupt, the manner in which erupted. 20% of the Nepali youth are unemployed. There is no avenues to get employed. So therefore, you see this concept of Nepo kid. In a sense, the system is trying to promote and provide job to those people who are privileged, or at least, linked to the political class who are in power. And one third of the GDP is from the remittances from the youth. Right. Who have been working in the Middle East in the construction companies. So they see the political system which promised them of new Nepal, in fact, is perpetuating a system that one has witnessed in Nepal after the democratic transition in 1990, and nothing has changed. So obviously the ban on the Facebook and other, triggered it, saying that, in a sense, without taking any action against the thing which the youth want, it is just basically banning the social media, where actually the youth these days if you look at everywhere, the interaction is much more over the social media. So if you ban it, you actually are not stopping people from contacting each other, from discussing certain issues. So therefore, I would say, these were the underlying kind of simmering discontent which saw a kind of eruption, perhaps, has not been seen in Nepal for a very long time.
Definitely, and quite unfortunate because so many lives have been lost, and in fact, we've seen the kind of scenes being witnessed across the country. Professor Singh, I'll come to you for your perspective, and taking on from where Dr. Pattanaik left. So there are, of course, deep-rooted political, socio-economic factors which could be the underlying factors at play behind the dissatisfaction, behind the frustration that we have seen among the youngsters of Nepal over the last few days, and the social media ban, of course, was the immediate trigger. But I'm curious to ask you, because these scenes are strikingly similar to what we've seen in Bangladesh, youth-led protests escalating into such violent demonstrations of the kind in which people lose their lives, with demonstrators storming into parliament buildings, torching residences of political leaders. This is what we saw in Bangladesh. This is something that we saw in Sri Lanka, to some extent also in Pakistan when Imran Khan's government was overthrown. Are there factors behind the scenes, something that you would see or you would describe as being more than what's meeting the eye in the South Asian region?
Yeah, in fact, this student-led protest is not confined to South Asia only. Yes, in a recent past, it happened in Sri Lanka, it happened in Bangladesh, now it is happening in Nepal. But if you look at the world history, students have always been in the forefront of protest. De Gaulle was one of the most powerful ruler of France, but de Gaulle has to quit position because of the student unrest in France. The same thing happened in East European countries also, when all the East European countries, the government were ousted, and again students were in the forefront. So wherever this kind of change has happened in the world, whether it is South Asia, whether it is Europe, or any part of the world, students have been in the forefront. It is youth who have led this thing. The problem with the youth is that the youth are not having any leadership. Then it creates problem as a chaos it is happening in Nepal. Now even nobody is knowing that who is the leader and to whom we should talk. This mayor of Kathmandu has come out as a possible leader, and he has requested the student that now we should initiate the dialogue with the military chief. But that's it. Yes, it is true that it is a continuation of this thing. But this banning of this 26 this WhatsApp and etc. It was just a trigger, as you both of you said this thing. Yeah. In fact, 2006 the monarchy was abolished, and then there was a great illusion that democratic system will come and the quality of the life of the people will improve. But nothing of that thing has happened. In fact, the current government is as corrupt, as inefficient, incompetent as it was the past government. So students, this Gen Z who are leading this movement, they were waited, and now they are feeling disillusioned. So there are two demands. If you see that, one demand is the removing of the ban, and the second demand is the stopping the corruption. So they have realized this thing, that these set of leaders, if they are again coming to the power by changing, there are some leaders coming here, as Smruti Pattanaik said, there's Deuba is there, Oli is there, and some Nepali Congress, etc. It has become with the game of musical chairs. Some these are rotating among themselves. And the common people, the masses, they have got nothing. The kind of corruption which is being seen in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka, in the whole of South Asia, Pakistan, etc., the same thing was there. And now the students once has come out of the street, so they were unstoppable. Only simply removing of the ban, it was abolished immediately. But once masses has been mobilized, once they have come to the street, it becomes very difficult to send them back to the home. The same thing is happening in Nepal. But now the need of the hour is that some leaders must come forward. At least this kind of the attack which is happening. Yesterday, ex-Prime Minister wife was burnt alive. So these kind of things are happening. It should be stopped immediately. International community also must take notice of it. India is waiting, watching carefully, and it is best strategy they have adopted, because unnecessarily in Bangladesh crisis, India was targeted unfairly. Here we are watching these things carefully, but now the international community has to come forward. At least this kind of looting and arson and this killing which is going on there, it must be stopped. But that will
Certainly,
be
we hope that that certainty and stability prevails in our neighborhood. But Dr. Pattanaik, let me ask you that question also, because as both of you said, of course, unemployment, corruption, governance failures are huge factors that could lead to this kind of frustration, dissatisfaction, especially among the youth. But to see similarities and similar kind of demonstrations turning violent and leaders being targeted, happening in almost every country in our neighborhood. In that context, what is your assessment? Do you see parallels between Nepal's situation and the street protests that rocked Bangladesh earlier? We saw similar scenes in Sri Lanka as well, especially in terms of how the youth is mobilized, in terms of the economic pressures, but also the distrust of political elites, as in this case of Nepal.
I think in all the three countries, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh and Nepal, the corruption by the political elites have been, really a very important underlying factor. Like, for example, in the context of Sri Lanka, one has also witnessed, the bankruptcy, and there has been allegation of corruption against the Rajapaksa family at that point of time, and it was very much evident when the Aragalaya happened in Sri Lanka. It was much more of there has to be a change of the government, corruption must go. Of course, we can discuss about what happened to this direction of dealing with the corruption. Of course, we have a new political party, the left political party, the JVP is in power, which is the NPP, National People's Power. In Bangladesh, also, when you saw this movement started, it was started as anti-discrimination movement. It was movement against a quota system. Now, when you look at the quota system, why students were protesting? Because the quota was denying them a job in government, sector. Because all the middle class everywhere think that a government job, even if, at a lower rank, is something which is much more stabilizing and something to look forward when you study in the university. And also, Bangladesh, also the anti-discriminatory student movement also started against the quota. Again, as I said, was related to the unemployment, because of the quota was, to use the Nepal, the word which is being used in Nepal is Nepo kid. Certain class of people were benefiting from, the quota system in Bangladesh. Similarly, in Nepal, you also see the same, it's a recycling of the same old political elite, protecting each other against, any kind of corruption. So investigation does not succeed because each one protect the other, so that when the other one comes to power, it protects the other political elite. So it was kind of, a kind of system that was going on where there is no accountability that actually was brought in. And this lack of accountability, again, if you look at the three countries, it was complete lack of accountability. Everywhere the student played also a very significant role. So I would see this thread, actually continuing in all these three countries, which actually led to the youth revolt. And perhaps to some extent, if I really don't know if one can make this kind of analogy that, this is something in South Asia, the youth are also watching. The youth in Nepal definitely must have watched what happened in Sri Lanka, how the Sri Lanka brought down a government that had the 2/3 majority, elected just a year before, a very powerful president. In Bangladesh, similarly, the youth brought down a prime minister who has been there for more than 15 years. So therefore, it is kind of inspiring that if you want, we can do it. That is why, this Hami Nepal kind of slogan fits in this entire revolutionary movement, I would say.
But it definitely is very, very concerning, given the fact that anti-corruption, anti-elite movements, they are turning into attacks on social institutions. It does not augur well for democratic institutions, and especially if it's happening in India's neighborhood, which is the world's largest democracy. Of course, it's concerning for India as well. So even though we've adopted a wait-and-watch policy, and we do hope that certainty and stability prevail in our neighborhood at the earliest. Let me get in a perspective from former Ambassador Mr. Yogesh Gupta, who's also joining us on the program. Ambassador, thank you for your time. Welcome to the program. Before you joined us, I was discussing with Dr. Smruti Pattanaik and Professor Singh from BHU about the underlying factors that escalated from a street protest into the kind of chaos that we saw across the last 2 days in Nepal. But we also spoke about the similarities that we've seen earlier in street-led protests led by the youth in Bangladesh, also in Sri Lanka. Do you see common denominators behind these youth-led movements, especially in a majority of these countries in India's neighborhood, right from Bangladesh to Sri Lanka to also some extent in Pakistan?
Yes, you are absolutely right. There is a certain commonality in all these protests which, broke out in Nepal and earlier in Sri Lanka and Pakistan and then later in Bangladesh. There are certain foreign countries, which are not happy with the current regimes in these countries, and these foreign countries, they lent a helping hand to encourage these protests, to spread these protests. And now in case of Nepal, you just mentioned about this organization called Hami Nepal, this student organization. This was used by this foreign hand by these countries. And they were encouraged to recruit more people. Money was easily made available. They were encouraged to recruit more people and spread, the grievances of the students and teach them the methods how to confront the authorities. So it was again a sponsored protest. Of course, the basic issues were there, which the previous panelists just mentioned, that unhappiness with the government about, the ban on the social media, because a lot of Nepalese are now working abroad, and these people were using the social media to connect with each other. Right. So those issues were there. People were unhappy with the governance of this person, KP Oli, the Prime Minister, because he was old-fashioned and he was against the social media. He said, "Ye social media kya hai, bakwas hai, isko band karo, and these people don't follow our laws," and so on. Then there was also the issue of, apart from these student grievances, there was also the issue of KP Oli getting too close to China. The Americans were not happy that KP Oli went to attend the 80th anniversary military parade in Beijing, where certain heads of state and government were present to applaud China. So the Americans were not happy about that, and they also, the earlier policies of KP Oli was basically pro-Chinese, so yes. the kind of, for instance, a number of contracts were given by KP Oli to Chinese companies for construction of roads or construction of railways or to build hydroelectric projects in Nepal. So the Americans were not happy about that because they want to use these countries, governments in these countries for their larger strategy in this region, Indo-Pacific and so on. And so the American hand was very much there, in these protests.
Definitely, Ambassador, the fact that whenever a crisis, internal crisis in our neighborhood escalates into the kind of violence that we've seen over the last 2 days, what are the best diplomatic tools that, even though India has announced that we are adopting a wait-and-watch policy and we do hope that peace prevails soon, but what is the best diplomatic tool that we must adopt each time an internal crisis of this level escalates in our immediate neighborhood, and this time it's Nepal that we are talking about. We have had very good relations with the country so far. How do you think we can manage this situation going further?
I think India has always been very keen, particularly the Modi government has been very keen to lend a helping hand to the governments, in these neighboring countries. You would have seen that when Sri Lanka went through some problems, that India was the only country actually which gave credits to the Sri Lankan government, which gave them facilities to import whatever they needed, whether it was petroleum products or it was food items or other things. Whatever Sri Lanka needed, then we give them loans to tide over economic difficulties, in large quantities, billions of dollars of loans. So India has been has been giving this helping hand. But each of these countries has different politics. In case of Pakistan, you have an army and then you have a civilian government. In case of Bangladesh, again, there was certain unhappiness with Sheikh Hasina. And then these Americans, they organized these student protests. In case of Nepal, again, there were certain. Now, we will, of course, need to keep a close touch with what's happening, at the grassroots level in these countries. And then advise the current, the current ruling dispensation that look, the people are not happy with you in such and such areas, and that you need to take care of these protesters, you need to take care of these grievances. Because there is a view that in case of Nepal, the ruling class as a whole, had become impervious to the demands of the students. Jobs were not being created. There was no opening left for people to, get anything done from the government. They had to go abroad, in large numbers. So, we need to have a better kind of governance. I think that is very important, in these neighboring countries in which India is able to assist and other countries also are able to assist. But the quality of governance has to improve. And then we also need to have people who are listening at the grassroots level, what is happening in these countries.
You're right.
Because these are very crucial for our security.
Definitely.
We have open borders with Bangladesh, We give national treatment to the people from Bangladesh. So to Nepal. So whatever happens, in countries like Nepal and Bangladesh, has immediate impact on our security. We have long borders, with these countries, which can't be suddenly manned,
Absolutely.
So
we will talk about what India and the other partners can do to restore stability as soon as possible in Nepal.
Yes.
Professor Singh, I'll take one question from you, because earlier on you spoke about how when the protests happened in Bangladesh, the anti-establishment sentiment also turned anti-India, and there was little that New Delhi could do. This time, what is it that we can do differently so that we are not interfering in their internal matters, but at the same time, we are doing every possible thing to restore democracy in our neighborhood and ensure that the anti-democratic forces are not strengthened, because ultimately it impacts our security, the security in the neighborhood, which is very, very concerning for us.
Yes, you are absolutely right. I think apart from the political parties, I think we need to also reach out to the important NGOs like the student organizations or the journalist organizations. We need to find out what is happening at the grassroots level. What are the other countries doing? What is America doing? What is China doing? We need to keep a very close watch on these things, because repeatedly what is happening is that, we are not able to take, in case of Bangladesh, of course, we knew that people were not happy with Sheikh Hasina's policies. And I think our High Commissioner in Bangladesh, he and our Foreign Minister, they told Sheikh Hasina that, look, you need to change your governance style, you need to be more inclusive, you need to talk to these people, and you need to resolve their grievances. So it's not that we are failing always. I don't know about Nepal, whether our ambassador there or our foreign minister here, they were able to advise this fellow. This fellow only was frankly not our man, only was more a friend of China. So only didn't listen to us. He was making visits to China, he was consulting China more often. So it was difficult to reach out to only for us. But in case of Nepali Congress people or others, I think we have had good communication with them in the past.
Okay, Professor Singh, you had a perspective on that. If you want to share with us, and I'll put it differently, the question to you, that in order to ensure that we lend a helping hand to our partner, that is Nepal, which is witnessing a chaotic situation right now, given that the demands that the youth in Nepal are making, but at the same time ensuring that the anti-democratic forces do not strengthen in our neighborhood, because that will be a huge challenge for us.
You see,
Bangladesh. Let me take a comment from Professor Singh.
Okay. Situation from Bangladesh and situation in Nepal, both are entirely different. In Bangladesh, the popular perception about Hasina was that she is too close to the government of India. So it was her perception. In Nepal, the Oli's perception is pro-China. As far as diplomatic communication is concerned, definitely, as the ambassador said, that Indian High Commissioner in Bangladesh advised Hasina government to have an inclusive government, etc. That kind of communication was not happening, because you see this till this date, Oli has not visited India. In fact, India was not very ready to welcome him. On 17th of September, he was supposed to come, but he could not come. In the meantime, this has happened. So here, at least all those protesters were in Bangladesh. There were anti-India sentiment was there. Here in Bangladesh, here in Nepal, all those protesters, there is no anti-India sentiment till this time against India. In fact, many voices have come out there against Oli, etc., that Oli was going too close to China, and Oli was also, there was the one student was saying that, in fact, all the terrorists were coming from Pakistan to Dubai to Kathmandu, and then they are entering into India. So in fact, because of this reason, India has a much better, and the relation, even my native village is also there on the Nepal border. Very long time, we hardly knew that there are two different countries. The porous border is there. We have many relatives also on the other side of the border. As we said, the roti beti ka sambandh. So we have that kind of sambandh with that. So the Nepal is like any state of this country.
Couldn't agree with you more, Mr. Singh. I am also from the North Bihar region, and I understand we have family relations with a lot of Nepalese.
As far as goodwill is concerned, there's a tremendous goodwill towards India in whole of Nepal.
And that leads me to the next question, Dr. Pattanaik. I'll take one question before we wind up. Now we are seeing in Nepal more visible calls to return to monarchy. From an India-Nepal relations perspective, what is your understanding of that sentiment which is now prevailing in Nepal? If there is a potential return of monarchy in our neighborhood, would India need to change its approach towards the kind of relations we have with Nepal?
I would say I don't see a potential return of monarchy. Of course, few months back, we had seen a demonstration organized by the royalists demanding, posing monarchy as an alternative. But as far as this Gen Z is concerned, though of course, most of the, as you said, the institutions have been burned down and all, which will be a heavy loss as far as Nepal is concerned. But I don't think there is any eagerness to get back to the monarchical system. As far as monarchy in Nepal is concerned, it was never an Indian friend. You look at the history of monarchy government from 1960 to 1990, the Panchayat regime, and after 1990 till 2006, 2001, Birendra's regime, there was a call for zone of peace to neutralize the special relationship Nepal had with India. Gyanendra's own record of again quoting China. So we don't have any excellent relationship as far as the monarchy in Nepal is concerned. So though I don't see there is any potentiality of the monarchy to get back, the only thing that should be a concern for India is that how the situation is going to stabilize, what is the kind of government that is going to be brought in, because it's not very, very clear. Many names are floating, especially Balendra Shah, Ravi Lamchane's name was there, but I think Balendra Shah's name is coming up again and again. So therefore one doesn't know what is the kind of government that is going to come in the transitional phase and when will be the election, because we are already dealing with the uncertainty in Bangladesh. So there will be again uncertainty in Nepal, unlike the Sri Lanka situation, which, they had an interim president. But here, of course, the president of Nepal is still there. He has not resigned. So we really do not know. So is the constitution going to be put in abeyance, or will it be according to the constitution? So what does the constitution say? Suppose a government forms. So those are the things probably we need to ponder over in the context of India-Nepal relations. And
Absolutely.
as my other panelists were saying, stability and peace probably is the primary concern as far as India is concerned.
You're right. That's something that India has always stood for. And as the world's largest democracy, as the immediate neighbor of Nepal, we would hope that this situation of volatility ends and that democracy is restored and strengthened in Nepal as soon as possible. With that hope, let's wind up the program. Time allows me to take up only that much on this edition of Perspective. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program, sharing your thoughts with us and our viewers. To you viewers, thank you very much for your time as well.
संसद टीवी के और भी प्रोग्राम्स देखने के लिए सब्सक्राइब करें हमारा YouTube चैनल और हाँ, इन्हें लाइक और शेयर करना ना भूलें।